Anyway, take up a lamentation over Tyre, and say to Tyre, who dwells at the entrance to the sea, merchant of the peoples of many coastlands, thus says the Lord God, O Tyre, you have said, I am perfect in beauty, and your borders are in the heart of the seas. Your builders have perfected your beauty, and they have made all your planks of fir trees from Lebanon. They have taken cedar from Lebanon to make the mast for you. Of oaks of Bashan they have made your oars. With ivory they have inlaid your decks of boxwood from the coastlands of Cyprus. Your sail was a fine embroidered linen from Egypt, so that it became your distinguished mark. Your awning was blue and purple from the coastlands of Ishha, and your inhabitants of Sidon and Arvad were your rowers. Your wise men, O Tyre, came aboard, and they became your pilots, and the elders of Gebal and her wise men were with you in repairing your seams. All the ships of the sea and their sailors were with you in order to deal with your merchandise. Persia and Lud and Put were in your army, your men of war, and they hung shields and helmets upon you, and they set forth your splendor. The sons of Arvad and your army were upon your walls all around, and the Gammadim were in your towers, and they hung their shields upon your walls and all around, and they perfected your beauty. Tarshish was your customer because of the abundance of all kinds of wealth, with silver and iron and tin and lead they paid for your wares. Yavan and Tubal and Meshech were of your traders, with the lives of men and vessels of bronze they paid for your merchandise. And those from Beth Togarmah gave horses and war horses and mules for your wares. And the sons of Dedan were of your traders, and many coastlands of your market. Ivory, tusks, and ebony they brought to you as payment. Syria was also your customer because of the abundance of your goods they paid for your wares, with emeralds and purple, embroidered work, fine linens, coral, and rubies. Judah and the land of Israel also became traders with you. With the wheat of Minnith and cakes and honey and oil and balm they paid for your merchandise. Damascus was your customer because of the abundance of your goods, because of the abundance of all kinds of wealth, because of the wine of Helbon and the white wool. Vadan and Javan paid for your wares all the way from Uzal. Wrought iron and cassia and sweet cane were amongst your merchandise, and Dedan traded with you in saddlecloths for riding. Arabia and all the princes of Kedar, they were there for your customers, for your lambs, rams, and goats, for they were your customers. The traders of Sheba and Ramah, they all traded with you. They paid for your wares with the best of all kinds of spices, and with all kinds of precious stones, including gold. Haran, Canaan, Eden, and the traders of Sheba, Asher, and Chilmad traded with you. And they traded with your choice garments in clothes of blue and embroidered work and carpets of many colors, and tightly wound cords, which were amongst your merchandise. And the ships of Tarshish were the carriers of your merchandise, and you were filled with a very glorious were very glorious in the heart of the sea. Your rowers have brought you into great waters. The east wind has broken you in the heart of the sea. Your wealth, your wares, your merchandise, your sailors, your pilots, your repairers, your seams, your dealers in merchandise, with all your company that is in your midst, will fall into the heart of the sea on the day of your overthrow. At the sound of the cry of your pilots, the pasture lands will shake, and all who handle the oar. The sailors and all the pilots of the sea will come down from their ships, and they will stand on the land, and they will make their voice heard over you, and will cry bitterly. They will cast dust upon their heads and wallow in their own ashes. They will make themselves bald for you and gird themselves with sackcloth, and they will weep for you in bitterness of soul with great bitter mourning. Moreover, their wailing, they will take up a lamentation for you and lament over you, and say, who is like Tyre? Let her who is silent in the midst of the sea, when your waves went out from the sea, and you satisfied many peoples. With your great abundance and your wealth and your merchandise, you enriched all the kings of the earth. Now that you are broken by the seas in the very depths of the water, your merchandise and all your company have fallen in the midst of you. All the inhabitants of the coastland are appalled at you, and the kings are horribly afraid. And they are troubled in their countenance, and the merchants amongst the people hiss at you, and have become terrified, for you will be no more. Ooh. What's that sound like?
Sounds like they're troubled.
No matter how great they think they are, they're set for destruction.
Oh, let me get this. Oh, Kurt, you need to bring that in here? Yeah, you can bring it in here. That's where they're putting all that stuff. What do you think about this chapter? Let me draw my instant map of the Holy Land. Yeah, they're going to do something with all this stuff after church today. I'm not quite sure why. But let me draw my insto map of the Holy Land. All right, that's the instant map of the Holy Land. What we're looking at is this area right in here, which at that day and age was the Phoenicians. And the Phoenicians were known for one thing. Anybody realize what that is? Trade. Not just trade, but they were sailors. They handled the sea, whereas other men formed armies to take great pieces of land and mountains and hills. And the Phoenicians, they were sailors. They didn't want anything to do with acquisition of property. They wanted acquisition of wealth.
They were traders.
Well, yeah, but they were sailors. In fact, they mastered the sea so well for hundreds of years, nobody even rivaled them. They couldn't, because their ships were better, built better, faster, stronger, and they mastered the Mediterranean Sea. When you read that whole thing in the list, they went obviously all the way down from Egypt all the way over to what would eventually become Rome. And they were masters of the sea. They traded the entire eastern Mediterranean. If you cut the Mediterranean in half, they traded the whole thing, and they feared nothing. Those were the best sailors in the world. They became skilled at not only trading, but fighting off those ships. They had soldiers and warriors, and they invented the first flame flingers, to fling flame on other people's boats. You got to remember, all the boats were made out of wood in those days, so it was a very, very critical use of weaponry, if you will. The last thing the sailor wants to see is a ship on fire, because, fire is unforgiving. They didn't have fire suppression units on those boats like we have. Well, they didn't have firefighters and, pumps, emergency pumps that'll come on and put out fires. So if fire got on a wooden boat with all that pitch on it, remember pitch was how they sealed the seams in those days, you know what happened? Oh, it was a barbecue. So they were masters of the sea. Nobody rivaled them in trade, and nobody rivaled them in fighting on the water. They were just the best at it. So, of course, they got wealthier and wealthier, and their gold and their silver and all this built up until they were just a powerful bunch of people. They knew they couldn't be conquered on the sea. They knew they had all the wealth in the world that they needed. In fact, they became a little obstinate, thinking that even if people swept around we can hire armies to fight. We don't even have to fight our own wars. That's the mention of the Persians and the Galileans and all those other guys. They were all soldiers. They were warriors that were obviously controlled by the wealth of Phoenicia and defended Phoenicia on the land. As far as the Phoenicians, they were all sailors. They could take care of themselves on the water. So if you had soldiers for the land and sailors for the water, and you're sitting on the biggest pile of wealth until Solomon, of course. Solomon made it a little better. Other than Solomon, you're sitting on the biggest pile of wealth. You have access to every country in the world, even access to men. They say they pay you in lives. Well, that's slaves, so that they can, row the boats. Who need you fear? No one. Sounds like America, doesn't it? We got the best army in the world. We got the strongest weapons in the world. We got the best air force in the world. We got the mightiest navy in the world. Right?
And when they run their planes into the trade center and blow it up. The train, 911.
That's your coffee too. I didn't know you brought it.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay. I thought it was less here from last week. But I appreciate it. Thank you. Well, that was an unsolicited attack, granted, but it certainly didn't bring down America. The retribution for that was we went over and destroyed Iraq. Not just the city, the entire country. We took out Saddam Hussein, his elite guard, his republic of tanks, 800 tanks. And they were gone in one night. The Air Force came with infrared abilities that they don't have. And they found out that if they flew at night, they would hide the tanks in the sand over there. So that's why we could never see them. They literally had little things dug out of the desert, and they would roll the tank back in there and cover it over. We couldn't find their tanks until we went in there with infrared cameras on the planes, because the tank would heat up from the ground heat. And as the ground cooled at night in the desert, the tank did not. So they just turned on the screen, and there's boom, 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 all these tanks.
Bomb, 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 bomb.
A-10s came in, and one night they destroyed like 740 tanks. One night. Woke up in the morning and all their tanks were destroyed. They took out a couple of buildings. We took out their whole nation. You know why? Because we got the mightiest army in the world. We got the mightiest air force in the world. We got the mightiest everything in the world. Do you believe that? We got all the wealth. You know that our poorest people in this earth, in this country, our poorest people are richer than most of the rest of the world people. Now I'm not talking about the sheikhs and the shahs and the kings and all that, who are the elite. But as far as most people go, there's, I don't know, 3 billion, 3.5 billion people in China. And our poorest people are richer than most of them.
Yeah.
Most of them. Our poorest people. That's a wealthy country. None of us are really starving for food. In fact, if anything, we need to lay off the beans and rice every once in a while and lose a few. Obesity is the biggest killer and problem in America, which leads to heart problems and everything else. How can you have an obese man or woman in a country that's poor? You can't. We always say, look at those Chinese people. They're all skinny, they're all tiny, they're all great looking. Look at Americans. I'll be needing another rack of ribs. Why is that? We're wealthy. We make salaries that are incredible. Well, Tom, I only make 50 grand a year. Wow. I know how much 50 grand is because I'm in the ministry. And I don't make 50 grand. I've been in ministry 35 years, 40 years, but 35 here.
But your wife makes more.
What if I wasn't married to her?
Bet you are. Aren't you lucky?
I chose wisely.
Yes, you did.
She also started out teaching too.
Yeah.
She started out as a special ed teacher who couldn't even get a classroom job. She had to go out to the homebound kids that were too, profound to come to school. And her salary, her initial salary was like $6,000 a year. So, we didn't have two nickels to rub together when we got married. We had to get married outside because we couldn't afford the church that we grew up in. Sorry, that's $9,000 you got to pay. I just want to borrow it for about 40 minutes and get married. I don't want to own it. So we got married outside. It was a garden, so we had no flowers. Carol carried a little bouquet that a friend made her out of orange blossoms because it was March and the blossoms were everywhere. So I said, cool, that works. She carried an orange blossom thing. She wore a dress that a mother passed down like 200 generations.
Why not?
And I wore a suit just like I do every Sunday. I didn't have a tuxedo. Couldn't afford it. We had no car at the time, so her father that rented cars at the airport let us borrow one for a week for our honeymoon. And we didn't have money to go anywhere, so we went up to Grandma's old beat-up, run-down, broke-up cabin in Cashiers, North Carolina. And we went out on the dam there on Lake Toxaway, and we found an old man selling moonshine. And we bought a jar of it. We brought it back to the beat-up, old, run-down, broken cabin and built a big fire because it was cold. And we sat there and, wow. Wish I could remember what happened after that. That was our honeymoon.
Sounds lovely.
Really wasn't. It was cold, it was sleety and rainy. The cabin was a dump. I mean, it really wasn't. There was no fancy dinner, there was no going out, doing anything. So I told her, I said, when we go into town today, tell everybody we just got married. Because a lot of people say, well, I'll pick their tab up. I said, yay. So boys, when you get married, tell everybody. Because sure as I'm standing here, somebody next to you is going to go, you just got me, congratulations. Hey, give me that tab.
When we were flying back from our honeymoon, we got a bottle of champagne from the airline Alaska Airlines. They gave us a bottle of champagne.
Carol and I, our anniversary is on March 17th, St. Patrick's Day. Has nothing to, we didn't get married on that day because of St. Patrick's Day. That was another story. But that's the day we ended up getting married. And we left New Zealand. We were in New Zealand, and our anniversary started, and it was March 17th, and we left at 8 o'clock in the morning to fly home. Well, 26 hours later, that was 10 o'clock in the morning we left there, and we landed in LA, and the date was March 17th, and it was 10:30 in the morning. So I'm going, wait, that isn't right. We've been on that plane for 26 hours. How could that possibly be? Well, we crossed the date line, went back in time one day. So we got 2 days of our anniversary, which was kind of cool, actually. So, never realized that before. Wealth. You know what the number one enemy of wealth is? God. Because when we become wealthy and powerful, just like the Jews down here in Jerusalem, God became second place in our lives. God doesn't like to be second place in your life. God does not want to be your friend. Jesus doesn't want to be your friend. He never did. He never intended for us to have a casual relationship. He intended for us to be intimate, to be strong, to be united, not just one day, but for the whole of your life. Jesus would rather meet us in a run-down, beat-up, broken-down shack in North Carolina than in the greatest palace or presidential office in the world. If we'll give our hearts to Him there, and if, in the course of your lifetime, 41 years later, you're still together. That's what Jesus wants for each of our lives. That's what God wanted for these people in their lives. But somewhere along the line, they amassed this stuff that we call wealth. And the more they amassed, the more distant God became to them. Basically, if you have everything, you don't need God. And I've heard that 1,000,000 times in my 40 years of ministry. Well, why should I go to church? Why do I need all that God stuff? I got a great job. I got a nice wife. I got 2 kids and a dog that doesn't go to the bathroom on the carpet. I got everything. I got 3 cars in the garage. I got a boat out back, and it's huge. What do I need God for? Sound familiar? Sounds like suburbia in America to me. And we ask ourselves, why are only 1 in 10 in church with any kind of relationship with God? Because 9 of them live in a country that has provided them most everything they need. And if they don't have it, they can get it. Because in America, you can work for it and earn it, or you can steal it. But in America, you can get it. And if you can do it on your own, why would you, farm it out to anybody else? And the great and mighty I am becomes the not so great and not so mighty. Well, I'll do it. I'll take care of it. And when we do that, we look at God straight in the eyes, face to face, eyeball to eyeball, and we say, whatever. And He's supposed to respect that. I don't know. So, along about this time, in this historical period, something incredible happened. The Mediterranean is kind of a active volcanic area. There's a lot of volcanoes. Remember Vesuvius blowing up and all the other ones blowing up and everything all the time, destroying cities and all that? Well, that's because the Mediterranean Sea is sitting on about 4 or 5 plates, not just 2 bumping together. But, you got the African plate, you got the Northern Europe plate, you got the Asian plate, you just got a bunch of plates. And when one moves, a lot of them move. They all... And you know what that does? That causes tsunamis, big ones. And it is believed historically that there was a bunch of ships out here full of all kinds of goods and stuff one time, when I guess those plates moved. Down to the hearts of the sea did they go. Wiped out their entire navy just like that.
Is that what's just happened to down in America?
Well, tsunamis hit all the time. They destroyed billions of people. They're going to want to hit Japan, for crying out loud. That killed hundreds of thousands of people to wash half their country out to sea. In fact, that island of junk is still floating around out there in the Pacific. All from Japan. Just like that. Happens all the time. And it's just a simple movement of a couple land masses. The shock wave goes out, the energy is released, picks up, literally lifts up the water, and starts sending it on its way. And that's a natural phenomenon in this earth. Now, some people say, well, did God cause that? can't say he did or he didn't. But he said, your time, your days are numbered. Your time is coming to an end, and the mightiness of your well, and the mightiness of your ships, and the mightiness of your everything will soon understand who's really in control. You know, I teach in here a lot, and I appreciate all you guys coming. But, you know, let's face it, is Chandler all that mighty and great? Well, he's cute, and he has a great sense of humor. And he's a delight. But he's not really all that mighty. I got news for you. I don't make the sun rise. I don't make it set. I don't make the grass grow. If I did, if I could, I would make it not grow. Because I'm tired of mowing it. I don't make the trees bloom. I don't make the fruit form. I don't make the oranges get orange. I don't make the seas come in and ebb out. I don't make the wind blow. And it was blowing last night at Mardi Gras. It was like a 30-knot wind out there. But lucky I have mousse and my hair looked marvelous. I don't cause any of that. You know, the fact is, the truth is, I can barely get myself dressed in the morning. I'm not kidding you. I'm not making a joke here. My arthritis has gotten so bad I can't button my shirt in. I have to have Carol do it half the time. Really, these stupid things. You know why? They got the button on there, but they cut the hole the wrong way. Well, who does that? Should have asked me. I would have told them. I'm not all that great and mighty, but I live in a nation that's extraordinarily wealthy. I don't have millions of dollars. And yes, my wife makes a fine salary, but it's not as fine as you might think it is because Mr. Obama is taking a lot of it away. She does okay. I don't do as good, but that's all right too. We have what we need. We want something to eat. We go and buy it. We can't afford it. Then we'll wait until we can. We both drive nice cars. Well, I got a truck. I didn't pay $50,000 for that truck. I didn't pay $40,000 for that truck. I didn't pay $38,000. Are you kidding me, Tom? Not really. That big old truck, nice and shiny and white, and giant tires on it. $21,000, brand new, right out of the box. It's not a $50,000 Maserati. Not a $150,000 Maserati. See what I'm saying? In the nation of wealth. Now, we could focus on that and spend our lives on that and do everything we can. But another reason Carol and I don't have a whole lot of wealth is we try and help a lot of people that aren't doing as well as she is. And if I cut off that, then yeah, we'd have more. And if I cut off those 2 Neanderthals that I gave life to, we'd definitely have more. And if I cut off the 2 or 3 kids that I've adopted, but I won't do that. Because to me, the wealth isn't everything. The relationships are. I don't know what I'd do if I lost one of my children. I hope I never do. I hope I die before they do. I don't know what I'd do if I lost some of my pseudo-children. I don't know what I'd do if I even lost some of my friends like Gary and Carol. You know, I can't turn around my house without them being there. What are you doing here? Oh, live here, man. It's the relationship. God will not be ever number 2 in your life. He doesn't want to be. He doesn't want to be your friend. He doesn't want to know you. Jesus told the story over and over again where the people came and they knocked and they said, Lord, open up to us. Didn't we preach and show up at church at Christmas and Easter? And I served on a committee one year. And what was the answer? Go away. I don't know who you are. Well, the only reason God don't know who you are, being that He knows everything, is because you've put Him number 2 in your life. Folks, this is the number one driving force in the United States of America today. Our churches are scarcely full. Even these big mega churches that do all the entertainment and that stuff, they're not doing anything. That's all it is, entertainment, just like going to the movies. Nobody's getting close to God. Nobody's surrendering their lives to God. Nobody's tithing to God. Because God is, whatever, in their lives. If you feed me and entertain me and put on good orchestras and music and bands and all that stuff, I'll come and sit there for an hour and listen. But, as far as intimate, no. Jesus said, I am the bridegroom and you are the bride. And I got a cabin that's run down, beat up, broken. But if we go there, I'll promise you and you can promise me, and that promise will be eternal, forever. Not just this life, but the life after. And I, says the Lord, am faithful. I cannot be unfaithful. Well, folks, this is the lesson. When we amass great wealth and we get great power and positions and are threatened by nobody, and we think that we have all that we need in life, and God becomes a non-entity. Get ready for the plates to move. Get ready for the plates to move. You know what? It'll be at our own hand. 3 people in 10 say they know and love God. Yay! That's 3. 1 in those 3 actually has a relationship with God that's meaningful. And they're faithful to God. And they're in church on Sunday. They're in Bible study. They're in Sunday school. They're in whatever. As John Wesley used to say, that 1 in 10 are the people who avail themselves of every means of grace. In other words, anytime there's something happening at church, they're there, they're working, they're part of it, they're studying, they're worshiping, they're singing, they're whatever. And the reason they are is because God to them is not number 2, He's number 1. But the other 9, well, 2 of them are casual worshipers, Christmas and Easter kind of people. Just in case, I better go. The other 7 could care less. You know what? I think it's interesting that we have a highway to hell and a stairway to heaven. That does anticipate traffic flow, doesn't it? Can I say that? I don't know. I just did, but I find it ironic. Stairway to heaven, a highway to hell. A greenway, an interstate. Lots of lanes. Fast travel. But instead, to heaven is just a rickety staircase. Think about it. This country is more dangerous and more vulnerable than any other country on the planet. Do you know why? Because we are wealthy. We are an abundant nation. I love the fact that Mr. Trump turned the economy around. I do, and I'm not going to get political on you. Quite frankly, because my little 401 that was nothing is now, getting to be a pretty nice little biscuit there. And 3.5 years, it has doubled itself and doubled itself again and doubled itself a third time. I'm going, wow, my little few bucks is now a whole lot of few bucks. And I say that because I'm looking at retirement this year. So, when I'm no longer earning an income, and I'm going to have to rely on that little bit that I put away, and the few bucks I get from the covenant pension to survive on. You want to know a truth? That won't be a problem. So I've never been one to have the $50,000 car, or the $100,000 this, or the $8 million, $1.5 million condo. Crying out loud, a condo. It's like an apartment. You're paying $1.8 million for it? Well, it's on Times Square. Well, who cares? It's It's noisy, it's traffic. I've been to Times Square, nothing there. Bunch of weirdos standing out there like this, wanting you to put money in a bucket. Yeah, that's what I want in my life. That's what I'm living for. That's why I get up every morning. Come on. There ain't nobody on this planet or on this church more aware, not that God should be number one, but that if he isn't, it's real easy to move a rock. It's real easy to throw an ice cube out there, you know. Titanic ship, God can't even sink. One cube. Well, that didn't work out so well. The Hindenburg, I like that. God couldn't even bring this airship down. Oh, the humanity, the humanity. You know what the humanity is? It's each day when 1 million souls put God second place. So why are we surprised when tragedy befalls us or hardship befalls us and we say, oh God, where's God, where's God? Well, same place he's always been. In your life, that's second place. I wonder if Carol would put up with me if I brought another woman home and said, I'm going to love this girl for a while. But you're still important. You can hang around with. She'd like that.
Dream on.
She would kill me. And you know what? In a fair fight, I would bet on her. She's bigger than I am. Got a good 2.5-inch reach. Probably a 20-pound weight advantage. Who said that? Fact of the matter is, she could crush me. I wouldn't fight back. I'd go, oh no. You look at that and you say, well, Tom, that's ridiculous. You never bring a woman home and tell Carol that she's number 2 now. No, I wouldn't. And it's not just because I love her, and for the last 41 years, good, bad, rich, poor, you know, all that crap you said at your wedding. Richer, poorer, sickness and health and all that other stuff. Well, we've lived up to that as best we can. And despite the fact of our failings, we've tried to keep God number 1. There's been days where Carol and I have wanted to say to each other, you get out. No, you get out. But we never did. You know why? Because we were more afraid of God than we were of each other. That's the honest to goodness truth. And you'll go through it, boys, when you get married. You'll have those days where you can't stand your wife or your wife can't stand you. Those days happen. But that shouldn't affect your promise to each other. Well, the same thing with God. Life gets tough. He throws a few waves our way every once in a while. But we don't abandon God, or life gets good. Get that big job, that new job, that promotion, that new car. But that doesn't affect the promise with God. Huh? Uh-oh. Oh!
Can't hold it down any longer. You better get over it.
I was talking about the devil, right? Just teasing, Charles. All right, let's go. That's chapter 27, folks. Remember who you are. Remember what you've made your promises to God. And no matter whether things go good or bad, make sure God's number 1.